And welcome to another recording of Two Geeks and a Marketing Podcast. As always, we're back here to keep you up to date with the latest news, tech, content, and wisdom from the world of marketing. And I'm joined by the man on a mission to keep marketing simple, the voice of the Marketing and Finance Podcast, and the host of the Roger Vlog video series. I give you Mr. Roger Edwards.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be back. And of course, my co-host is also a man on a mission to demystify digital marketing. He's the host of the Content Marketing Studio video podcast. Here is Mr. Pascal Fintoni.
Well, thank you very much, Roger, and thank you to your viewers and listeners for your wonderful support. We love the comments and feedback. We know that you like the segment, so let's begin with In the News.
Disney Plus has released a co-viewing experience called Group Watch, allowing up to 7 people to try out social viewing during lockdown and to share reactions using emojis.
Well, Facebook is rolling out options for businesses to sell products using WhatsApp via Facebook Shop, and in the process completing its unification of the shopping experience across Facebook apps.
Zoom recently announced that they will offer the option to host live events and sell tickets. The service will be called On Zoom, and the news was first revealed at the virtual Zoomtopia user conference.
What a name. So according to Bloomberg.com, YouTube is so inundated with political adverts that it cannot place them all in front of the desired audience. The situation prompted a code yellow alert, an internal label that assigns more urgency to projects.
The latest IPA Bellwether survey shows that UK businesses have continued to cut marketing budgets during the third quarter of the year, with only 3.8% of respondents able to report an increase in available spend.
The Committee of Advertising Practice is considering banning celebrities, sports people, and social media influencers from appearing in gambling adverts to limit appeal to young people.
As a potential sign of things to come, ITV has recently restructured in order to put more emphasis on streaming services, which currently include the Hub Catch-up platform, Ad-Free Hub Plus, and BritBox.
Finally, a couple of weeks ago, LinkedIn rolled out LinkedIn Stories globally, and reaction remained mixed, with the users unsure whether it is adding Instagram-like glamour or more clutter.
Should we talk about Instagram Stories then?
Yes.
I woke up, I think it was Tuesday this week, and oh, look, there are circles at the top of my LinkedIn app. So, of course, I realised that I'd been given access to LinkedIn Stories. Now, they're not as sophisticated as Instagram Stories. There aren't as many options. You can literally post a little video, you can post a photograph, you can add stickers, and you can add text, and it's pretty much it. There's none of the bazillion different features that you get on Instagram Stories. And funnily enough, all week, pretty much everybody within my ecosphere has got access to LinkedIn Stories, and most of the stories that people have been posting have been, "Oh, I've got LinkedIn Stories," and that's it. The jury's out. I'm not sure whether it's the sort of thing that LinkedIn people really want. I mean, I quite like the story functionality. I'll give it a try and see what happens, but you know, We'll have to wait and see whether people adopt it, whether they'll use it to show people behind the scenes to their business, or whether they'll just play with it for a few days and then ignore it.
Yeah, I'm unsure myself. You know, I love keeping it almost like a research project, like a watching brief, if you will, Roger. For me, it's kind of this idea of discussion you and I had before, which is each platform should provide a different experience, and you should be able to do different things. And I know that stories do well within the Facebook ecosystem, which was mentioned in the news roundup a moment ago. And it was never missed on LinkedIn. I mean, I don't remember even LinkedIn asking people, would you like it and would you use it? And if so, what for? I think there are more pressing features and more, I would say, relevant features for the LinkedIn.
Yeah. Having said that, I did say, it's just dumb, isn't it, that LinkedIn has copied Instagram Stories? And one of my friends said, well, actually, I quite like the functionality in Instagram Stories, but I don't really have any of my customers on Instagram, but I've got loads of customers on LinkedIn, and therefore I'm really pleased that I've got effectively the same thing now on LinkedIn. So there are people out there who are really happy that this has happened.
Thanks for that, Roger. So can I ask you about Zoom and on Zoom? To begin with, what do you make of the name, because you made me laugh, the name of their conference, Zoomtopia?
Zoomtopia. Yeah, it sounds a bit sci-fi, doesn't it? It sounds a bit sci-fi. Utopia. I guess the high ups at Zoom must be feeling as if they are in utopia at the moment, because pretty much everything seems to come back to Zoom these days, doesn't it? I quite like the idea, although it's not available yet in the UK, is it, that we will be able to sell tickets to events that we run on Zoom, and presumably they'll be able to link it into things like PayPal and Red Stripe and stuff like that to allow us to do it. I think you can already fudge payments by using something like Calendly to link into Zoom, okay. But the ability to effectively create it all within the same app will be pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I mean, what I will want, though, I will say, is I think Zoom could do with more, kind of design elements to it, or, so you could actually apply your own brand or your own kind of color schemes and so on, because obviously at the moment we have the window and then a lot of black area around you. And I think if we could kind of, make it more, in line with your branding, in addition to doing live events that you could charge for, I think that would be quite interesting.
Yeah, I think there are quite a lot of apps out there that offer similar experiences to Zoom. And funnily enough, I'm going to talk about a few of those when we get to the marketing tech and apps section. But yeah, Zoom is quite basic in its customability, isn't it? Customization. You can't really do much with it.
Not at all. So let me ask you then, to close on our review of the news, Disney Plus, but also the use of language such as co-viewing and social viewing. Why not just say watching movies with your friends?
Oh, it's just jargon, isn't it? It's just jargon. I think one of the things about the COVID crisis is it's just made everybody start spouting jargon more and more and more. We hear all of these phrases like lockdown and things like that, and they just seem to find their way into the English language and become deep-rooted. And yeah, you're right. Why say co-viewing? Why say that social viewing? Just say watching with friends. It's I'm always going on about this in my own podcast and in my speeches, but you don't go around talking jargon when you're meeting your friends and family. So why should you do it in your corporate communications?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wouldn't expect any less from the man who's behind a movement to keep marketing simple. Thanks very much again for the news. Let's move on now to our next segment, the content spotlights. And in this segment, Roger and I surprise each other with a little gem from the interweb. So, what have you got for me today, Roger?
Okay, Pascal. Now, this article caught my attention for a couple of reasons. First of all, I like the headline, and the headline is 6 Reasons Your Cold Messaging Efforts Fail and Why It Matters. And the second thing is that it caught my attention for was because I've been getting a lot of cold emails recently. Now, this probably hasn't started happening to us in the context of the Two Geeks and Marketing podcast, but I'm constantly, day in, day out, getting inundated with cold emails from podcast guest agencies, Pascal.
Oh, right.
And there are hundreds of these agencies all over the world, and they basically get people to sign up to them, and then they pitch those people around podcast hosts to try and get them on their shows. And honestly, a year or so ago, I maybe got 1 a week. Now I'm getting up to 10 a day, and they are starting to drive me insane. Primarily because the people that they pitch to me are completely irrelevant for my particular audience. I don't need a ball bearing manufacturer on a marketing and finance podcast. But that's a bit of a tangent. But it just made me want to read this article about cold messaging, because I'm just inundated with cold messaging all the time at the moment, whether it's on email, whether it's on LinkedIn direct message or wherever. And I guess I'm in two minds about the article, because what it's saying is, here are the things that you shouldn't do in order to make sure that you get a better response. Now, I'm a bit tied by that, because half of me doesn't want people to improve them, because that means there'll be even more of them. But let's bear with it. So obviously, cold calling, cold messaging, whatever you want to call it, we all know what that means. It's when you haven't got a relationship with the person you're going to talk to, and you're effectively trying to introduce yourself with a view to eventually doing business with that individual or that company. And they've got these 6 things. And I'll go through them very, very quickly, and we can maybe have a bit of a laugh about it to a certain extent. So the first thing to make sure you don't do is to use the wrong name or the wrong company. Now, again, that happens so often, doesn't it? You know, I'm often called Bob or Ted or something like that, and the one that always gets me is they'll spell Roger with a D, Rodger, when my name is Roger. So that winds me up straight away. Or, of course, they forget to even put a name in, or it's Dear Roger Edwards or Dear Roger Edwards Marketing Guru or whatever it is, because they've picked it out of LinkedIn. So make sure you get the name right and the company name. I mean, it's basic stuff, isn't it? But so many people get it wrong. And then the second one is over familiarity. Now, again, you know, you don't know somebody, and yet your first line on the email is, "Hey, how are you doing today? Hope you and your family are coping with the COVID crisis." Now, okay, maybe that's quite polite, but it is a bit over familiar, isn't it? Do you really need to do that? I mean, it does wind me up a little bit. Just get to the point straight away. Number 3, no call to action. Now, obviously, a lot of them do have a call to action. Buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, even though you have got no relationship with them. But sometimes they do have this mass of text, and you do start reading. I often read these things just to see if I can learn anything from them. And then you'll get to the end and you think, well, actually, they're not asking me to do anything. Then, of course, the complete opposite side of the coin, you've got the unreasonable call to action. You know, I'll give you a call in 15 minutes. Is that okay? Well, of course it isn't. You know, that sort of thing. Or can we book an initial call to talk about this? Well, you know, I don't know you from Adam. I didn't invite this conversation, and you're still, you know, you're wanting to have a chat with me immediately. And the last 2, lack of customization and lack of research. And lack of research is, I do find that quite a lot in my in those emails that come to the podcast guest agencies. They'll say, we loved episode 33, which was your interview with Dave Smith, and Dave Smith was talking about lawnmowers, and of course Dave Smith hasn't been on my podcast, and I wouldn't have somebody talking about lawnmowers anyway. You know, so they obviously haven't done, or they try to make you think they've done some research, but it's quite easy to trip them up. There was one the other day that said, "Love that interview with Dave Smith and what he was saying about this point." And so I just replied and said, "And what did you think about Dave Smith's opinion on Zoom calls?" And of course, I didn't get an answer because they hadn't actually listened to the podcast. So if you're going to cold email and cold message, those are the 6 things in this article. And the article was in Forbes magazine, I should have said that, written by Chris Smith. Just please try to get those 6 things right, and then you've got a better chance of not really annoying me. You'll have a chance of only annoying me a little bit.
No, well, do you know, listening to you, obviously, I'm remembering everything that's happening to me the last few weeks. Now, I'm not getting yet the podcast, you know, kind of agencies, but I'm getting the content agencies. So we get an email, Roger, and usually from a very strange email address. So it's at gmail.com, and they claim to be part of a big agency. Actually, when you go and check the URL of the website, usually their blog is from 2018. It's not being refreshed. You don't know who's working behind it. They don't have a LinkedIn profile. But they would say things like, "I read your article on XYZ, and I would like to, you know, submit another article similar to that content. But as you know, Roger, I only do video blogging. I don't write. So I'm not sure how they can read my articles, albeit I do have some show notes, but like you know, they try and suggest that they've spent some time on it. And for me, where, you know, obviously I kind of agree with you, I want to actually use my content marketing as a vehicle to showcase my connections and essentially build the community together. And to have complete strangers jumping on a podcast, a video cast, or it just contrary to how I want to do my content marketing. And I just feel that people need to respect that more.
Yeah, somebody drew an analogy with it. If you go on a date with somebody, you might start with a drink, you might progress to a meal, and then eventually you might go into the bedroom. And the analogy is it's almost as if a lot of this cold messaging is just, hey, how are you doing? Let's go straight to bed. And that just doesn't work. That just doesn't work in most cases.
And people must build their network, and they must extend their reach. I'm the first one to agree to that, and will apply my time accordingly. But there are ways and means, and I think I wonder whether this maybe comes from a younger generation of business owners and business leaders, or quite simply is just a task to get off your desk.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. I've got to send out 100 emails today. Bang, 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 bang. That's the way it probably is.
So, Roger, today I want to talk to you about a recent article, which is actually based on a report from the market research company called Gartner, which I'm sure you've come across as a name, doing a lot of market intelligence and kind of industry insights. The website that reviewed the report, should I say, is Tech Republic. I tend to kind of dip in and out of Tech Republic to just find some news, and I try as much as possible to let my customers know what's coming around the corners. And very often Tech Republic can give you some very good insight. But on this one, they reviewed the report from Gartner looking at the top 10 predictions for 2021 based on the fact that they would argue that the pandemic has accelerated digital transformation and the adoption of new technology. Now, the lady who kind of reviewed it, actually, what is interesting on their website, they had a video to give an overview of the article. Then the article, of course, a link to the main report. So Tina Maddox is the associate managing editor of Tech Republic. She was interviewed by one of her colleagues, and she gave a quick overview of the top 10 predictions. Now, I'm not going to go through all 10 because I don't want to obviously steal the thunder, but also time is against me. But I'm going to go through 4 and get a reaction. And I've got a special one at the end just to get your reaction as well. So these are predictions for what's going to happen in and around 2004, 2005, but that's been brought forward because of pandemic and how people have been using, obviously, technology more. So the first one, by 2024, 30% of businesses will run out of storage for their data. And they will accelerate the use of DNA storage, DNA as in artificial DNA, but we talk about the real stuff, DNA, whereby gigabytes of data can be stored into a cell, literally. I know, that's be incredible. Another prediction as part of the top 10, by 2025, 40% of physical experience-based businesses will improve and get back on track financially by extending with paid virtual experiences. So essentially, those who are in the retail industry suggest that they're going to come back and have a revival, but they're going to be doing so by almost, what we discussed a moment ago with on Zoom, where people will pay to maybe attend a fashion show organized by that brand and so on and so forth, which I thought was fascinating. There's one for you as well. By 2025, customers would be the first humans to touch more than 20% of all products and produce in the world, because usually automation would have been how those products and produced would have been delivered to them. So the prediction is that when you get a package in future, Roger, you might be the very first human to touch the package, because everything else before that was a machine. And then final one from the top 10, before my little surprise to you, by 2025, customers will pay a freelance customer service expert to resolve most of their customer service issues. So you're on kind of VAPA just to have a go at BT or Virgin or something like this.
That sounds like a new cottage industry, doesn't it?
It does a bit, yeah.
There's probably a lot of money involved in that, because let's face it, some of the service being given by companies like BT at the moment is, let's face it, service from companies like BT has been crap forever. But now, during the COVID crisis, it's even worse, and they just blame COVID for this. But the possibility of actually paying somebody to do the complaining on my behalf had never occurred to me before. But I can see how that might develop. Yeah. All of these are interesting. I mean, the DNA one was almost quite scary. But But the time frame they're talking about here isn't long. We're talking about 5 years, 2024, 2025. And I do often wonder whether, a lot of the time when it comes to technology, we often think things are going to happen a lot faster than they are, but actually things don't take as long as they may be planned to do. So I'm not sure 2025 is the right sort of frame for this. It seems to me that some of that, the DNA one particularly, is going to be a bit further away.
But we shall see, yes. It just, I had to read the article several times and look into it to understand. I don't understand the technology, but I know that they've done it. These are artificial cells, by the way, and DNAs, not although we're perhaps close to having our own memories. But the very last one for you, Roger. Now, I want to remind our viewers and listeners that Roger is the man behind keeping marketing simple. Bear this in mind as I read this prediction, and then if you have the luxury of watching it on YouTube, pay attention to Roger's reaction. And if you're listening to the podcast, just imagine Roger's reaction as I read the following. By 2025, traditional computing technologies will hit a digital wall, forcing the shift to a new paradigm, such as neuromorphic computing.
Yes, that is just typical corporate gobbledygook, isn't it?
So
management speak, mumbo jumbo, techno babble. It's the sort of thing you would hear in an episode of Star Trek or Doctor Who. We've reversed the polarity of the neutron flow. It doesn't mean anything. It's just made up words to make them sound clever.
So just for those of us who prefer the English language, and forgive me, I'm not attacking Tech Republic or Gartner. I get it's not. It's probably a very simple language to them. But for all of us, it just means that AI and speech recognition and machine learning will become more and more prominent.
Yeah, so why not just say that?
So thanks again, Roger, for looking into that little article and responding to these top 10 predictions from Gartner. But on the subject of technology, shall we move on to marketing and techs?
Let's do that.
So this is the marketing, tech and app segment. Every week, Roger and I surprise each other with one or two tech solutions or even gadgets that can make life easier. So what have you got for us this week, Roger?
Okay, Pascal, earlier we were talking about Zoom and how in the future we're going to be able to charge for running events on Zoom. Funnily enough, my tech and apps this week are about events. Now, this week I was speaking at a conference. It was called the Social Media and Marketing Show, put together by #events. I've done quite a few of their live events over the year, run by a really nice bloke called Andrew Charlton. So, hi, Andrew. And this was obviously totally online. And they used 2 different apps to run this event. And I thought it was really good, so I actually had a look into these apps. Now, they're not cheap, so you're probably not going to use these unless you're a bigger company and you want to put on fairly substantial events, talking hundreds and potentially thousands of people. But they are really interesting. And, Pascal, you were saying before that Zoom isn't that customizable. Well, these apps that I'm going to talk about are very customizable. So the majority of the conference was run on an app called Eventee. Event with an extra E at the end, eventee.co. And effectively, it's almost like you put together your agenda, and each speech or each workshop can be streamed into the app on as a live video from somewhere like YouTube or a platform like Restream. And people effectively join the conference by logging on, so they get their own profile, and they can interact with the speaker. So the beauty of it is that I pre-recorded my talk, and they streamed it live, but I was actually in the session as it was being broadcast and talking to the people that were watching the talk. And I think that's quite interactive, and it's quite nice in the sort of world that we live in, because even though I wasn't physically doing it live at that moment, I was still there in person, able to interact. And then people can actually network in between talks simply by, they can see somebody who they like the profile, just like they would on LinkedIn, I guess, or any social media platform, and then they can have a video call, or they can do a messaging type call, all within the same app. And of course, it only lasts for the duration of the conference, and then it disappears. Now, there are options to allow you to keep the speeches there, etc., etc. But the interactive bit will disappear at the end of the conference, and that's quite good, because sometimes on social media what you do is permanent and your interactions are permanent, whereas this is encapsulated within that particular event. So I thought it was a really nice platform, and it worked really well. The second one, and I have seen this before, is called airmeet.com, and what they did is they ran a end of conference networking session using this app. And the difference between this one and Eventi is that it's almost like a virtual conference area with split into tables. You know how you go to a conference and they have round tables with 10 people on each table? Well, this app is set up like that, and you effectively go in and you decide where to sit, just like you would if you go into a big, Upreneur Summit. You decide, I'm going to sit over there with those 9 people, whatever it might be, and you actually sit on the table, and then all the people who are sat at that table, their little video images pop up just like they would perhaps in a Zoom call, but it's much more sort of themed to that environment. And you can discuss with the people on that table within the 10, or you can move to a different table, or you can engage one-to-one with that. And I just thought that this is really quite successful in replicating the real-life networking that you do get at an in-life event in a virtual platform. Now, as I say, these are not cheap apps. You're not going to spend $15 a month to use these. You're talking hundreds, maybe thousands of pounds. But if that's what you're looking for, and you are a bigger company and you are looking to host something a little bit more sophisticated than Zoom, then I would check out Eventi and AirMeet.
Oh, thanks very much for that. I didn't know them. I knew others, but not those. And importantly, it reminds us about networking. I mean, ultimately, I think at this moment in time, most platforms focus on the speaker or the presenters, but we have to also look after the experience of the attendees, and networking. Yes. The ability to have a chat during the coffee breaks and so on is usually where actually most people meet the right contacts and connections. Bear in mind your earlier comments around cold emailing or cold calling, but also if you think about how you built your business and how you built your brand, is usually during those chats with others, not just listening politely to the presentations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Roger, well, I'm going to continue, if you don't mind, with the Chrome extensions. I will exhaust them very soon. And just to be clear to our viewers and listeners, I'm not suggesting you should use all the extensions I'm mentioning. I'm just going through a bit of rediscovery of what I used to use, and hopefully making life a little easier for yourselves. So, you know that curation is important in content marketing. We do our fair share for the Two Geeks, but also for the different video series and podcasts that we run. And we have different ways and means to do so, but sometimes you just want to work a bit faster. And there's an app called Panda, very much like the cuddly animal. Although I'm told they're not so cuddly. You have to be very careful, not approach them too quickly. But essentially, Panda will allow you to shortlist your go-to news websites and display the latest news articles in a way that is very easy to use, is very easy to scan, read, and only pick the articles you want to mention, for example, a news roundup, or even just to tweet about and so on. So it's very visual. It's very kind of interesting to look at, and it can be just a bit easier sometimes to use than, for example, Flipboard, which I have. I use Trello as well, and a few others. And in the spirit of Panda, it's about speed of execution. There's two versions, of course, as you would expect. There's the Google Chrome extension. There's also the web version. So feel free to experiment with both, but that could be very helpful for you. At the heart of it really is because curation is becoming an important activity for you. You could also delegate that by having a single account, and so on and so forth. So That's the number one option. Next is obviously, well, if you want to use a curation tool such as Panda and any others, you need to obviously find those news websites. And sometimes that can be a little tricky, although, yes, Google will be your friend. So there is something called SimilarWeb. Now, SimilarWeb started life actually as a tool for SEO because it would analyze website rankings and traffic figures and give you some notions about, where the traffic came from. But they have also a feature free of charge, which allow you to find similar websites to your favorite website. So let's say, for argument, Roger, you found an amazing news website about the world of financial management and the likes. You could copy and paste the URL into their search function, and it will come up with a report showing similar website based on keywords and content themes. So that can also accelerate and help you save time in finding your go-to news website for curation. Again, you want to be seen to be well connected, well researched. You want to be able to quote different brands and different websites, and maybe sometimes not always go for the same brands everybody else. If you work, for example, in business, to always quote the same as everybody else can sometimes be seen as just a me too. Here you are in a position to actually surprise your audience with something very different. So Panda, as your way to curate, but to find the news website, I would recommend SimilarWeb.
I like the sound of that second one in particular, and I'll tell you why. I'm a big fan of Flipboard and such like, but what I do find is that because they try so hard to find things that they think you'll like, that I think that they unintentionally create confirmation bias in a lot of people. It'll learn the articles you like, it may learn your particular political persuasion, and it'll give you articles which you will genuinely agree with. And I think one of the things we have to do as individuals all the time is seek out contrary views to what we feel, especially from a political point of view, I guess, at the moment. And I think that something that, like you've described there, which might open my eyes by giving me access to something else, which I might not have found had I just used those websites that I've been using for ages, which have effectively drawn a circle around the sort of stuff that I'm given access to.
No, I think you're right. And the other thing that I'm finding with Flipboard, I've been using it for years. I'm a huge fan. But now for myself, having to discount more articles than actually using them. There's something strange happening at the moment where either they try and share a bit too much, or like you said, it seems to be very, the same as what I've seen a day ago. It doesn't seem to change very often. Or quite simply, sometimes it's simply off topic. I found myself having to pass more than actually, oh, yes, I'd use that one. So that's what I've been looking at. And I think it's part of what we should do, all of us, is to kind of refresh your toolkit from time to time.
Definitely.
Excellent. Well, listen, shall we move on to what I believe to be your favorite segment, Roger? This Week in History.
In 1895, German scientist Wilhelm Röntgen takes the first X-ray pictures by accident. He'd been experimenting with electricity but failed to turn off the machine, which then overheated and emitted rays, which would revolutionise modern medicine.
Wow. Well, in 1906, the first International Radio Telegraph Conference is held in Berlin to set international standards for ship-to-shore communication, leading to the adoption of the official SOS distress signal as the worldwide standard for help.
In 1988, Robert Morris of Cornell University is sentenced to 3 years probation and a $10,000 fine for an experiment that went wrong, during which over 6,000 government computers were infected by a worm virus.
Oh dear. Well, in 1989, the final episode of Blackadder Goes Forth airs on BBC One, shortly before Armistice Day. Entitled Goodbye, it was the very last episode of Blackadder to be produced and was praised for its powerful and memorable ending.
In 1990, Dances with Wolves premieres in Los Angeles, starring and directed by Kevin Costner. This surprise box office success won 7 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director.
In 1999, Business.com becomes the most expensive domain name sold in history. Bought for $7.5 million, it still ranks in the top 10 of all time's most expensive domain names, with Voice.com currently at number 1.
My goodness. In the year 2000, Pets.com becomes one of the biggest failures of the dot-com bubble. Despite an extensive marketing campaign and a sock puppet as a mascot, it went into liquidation due to an unsustainable business plan.
And in 2008, Barack Obama becomes the first African American to be elected president of the United States, defeating Republican candidate John McCain.
Incredible.
So,
Blackadder goes forth. Oh.
Yes, I mean, I love all the Blackadder series, but that one in particular, and they're right, that ending brings tears to my eyes every single time.
I mean, Blackadder is probably one of my favourite series of all time. I think that the writing and the comedy was just incredible. You know, all of those lines like as cunning as a fox who was professor of international cunning planning at Cunning University, all of that sort of thing was just genius. But yeah, that last scene, which they filmed in a studio probably less about the size of my study here. Apparently, Rowan Atkinson described that in an interview at one point. But the way they did it, the lighting, the flashes, the special effects, the smoke, and then it just faded, didn't it, into a field of poppies. And I get tears in my eyes every time I see that episode. Yeah. It's staggeringly powerful.
And of course, by the time we publish this episode, will be approaching the 11th of November date as well, which I think is very significant. But just to kind of spend some time on that, Blackadder, for me, it was actually a very important point about the power of the editing and what you can convey. Because actually, when it was all said and done and the footage had been captured, the actors and directors were nonplussed. Actually, they felt that they'd messed it up. But the editor saw something in there, and that you say that crossfade to the field of poppies, it's just everything, isn't it?
Absolutely incredible. I mean, and a simple idea, really, but just as you say, it just proves that little edit made such a massive difference.
Can we talk about accidents? So you began with a very happy accident. The X-ray, was invented by accident, and as you mentioned, changed modern medicine forever. But then I feel sorry for that poor Robert Morris, who was trying to essentially study how viruses worked on computers and created one of the worst ones in 1988.
I know. And well, serendipity is the word for a happy accident, isn't it? I suppose Robert was an unhappy accident to a certain extent.
Because he was trying, to essentially say how it worked and what we could learn and do about it. But bless him, that didn't go so well. But I had forgotten, how successful Dances with Wolves had been. Seven Oscars. That's something else, isn't it? When
we were talking about that before, I was thinking, wow, that is incredible. And it's not a film I think of that often. We often have conversations before we hit record for this podcast. Which film should we do next week? And I don't think I've once thought about Dances with Wolves, but it is such a good film. It's such a good film. It reminds me of another good film which had a similar theme, which was The Man Called Horse, from I think that must have been the film in the 60s or the 70s, starring Richard Harris, perhaps.
Indeed.
Incredible film. That's one I'm going to have to look up because I've not seen A Man Called Horse for years. Just love the way these conversations go.
Yeah, certainly. I highly recommend, if you've not seen the director's cut of Dances with Wolves. I mean, it makes it for a much longer movie, but in terms of his relationship with his newfound friends, it's just, I would agree. But just to close, when I kind of captured this item about pets.com,
yes,
and the fact that they went belly up because they didn't have a business, I would argue, plan, I thought, I bet Roger's going to have a wry smile thinking, I've told you so. You need strategy, not just a sock puppet.
Absolutely. But the .com bang bubble, whatever you call it, was a classic example of probably quite interesting business ideas, but ridiculous amounts of money thrown at these companies who had no plan, no strategy at all, and they failed because they didn't have the strategy. And we still see it going on today, and I'll not stop going on about it, Pascal.
No, absolutely. Well, let's move on to people who get it right. Our contest creator shout-out is next. In this segment, Roger and I select one content creator and we want to celebrate their work and their commitment to their community. So, Roger, who have you got this week?
Okay, Pascal, I'm going to give a shout out for a lady called Salma Jaffrey. Now, Salma focuses on helping people to be good on video. And, I like playing around with video. I've got my own YouTube channel. You very kindly mentioned the Rog Vlog series at the start of each show. And I do the odd Marketing Made Simple video as well. But I have a running joke with myself that I have a face for radio, because I sometimes just don't feel comfortable with my great big shiny bald head being on screen when there are so much more attractive people with hair around and this, that and the other. And different people have different hang-ups about how they look. And I've been watching Salma's videos for quite a few years now, and she's got a very engaging personality, and I love the subjects. And she was meant to be speaking at a conference that I was going to. I'll rephrase that. She was speaking at a conference I was going to in the UK, and then I got invited to speak at another conference in Serbia. So I disappeared off to Serbia, and I never actually got to see her in person. But as it turned out, something went wrong with her visa, and she couldn't come to the UK in the end, and she ended up doing her presentation virtually, and this is a couple of years before COVID, so she was a pioneer in that respect. But her videos are really engaging. But this particular one that caught my attention this week has the great title of How to Make YouTube Videos Without Showing Your Face. So if you feel that you've got a face for radio, then this is a great video that you can use. And in fairness, I've got used to pointing the camera at myself, almost like the selfie video, and I've become comfortable with it. I still feel a bit of a prat sometimes wandering around Edinburgh with a camera in my hand, but I've sort of got over it. But if you look on YouTube, there are a lot of YouTubers, often YouTubers with hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of subscribers, and they don't show their face. There's a whole genre of travel videos where whoever is filming it, you never see their face, and they don't even speak either. They actually put subtitles on the screen, like I arrived at the airport, I was flying with British Airways, whatever it might be. And these people are making engaging videos which are getting lots and lots and lots of subscribers and lots of views. So it made me think you don't have to show your face. Whatever you might think about your face, you don't have to show it. So it made me laugh, and I thought that was a lovely little video. So check it out. The link to the video will be in the show notes, as is always the case with the podcast. So check out Salma Jaffrey on YouTube.
I'm so pleased you bring that up, actually, because it is a fact that, there's no obligation to be on camera to produce an engaging bit of content. Indeed, you could just, look at all the directors and producers working in the film industry. They're not in front of the lens. There's no requirement to be a performer. So I will definitely share that with my customers, because I am looking at ways to encourage people to go ahead and become visual storytellers without necessarily being the performer themselves. So thanks for that, Roger. Really appreciate it. So, my content creator and whose work I want to celebrate is Colin Gray. Colin Gray is the founder of the podcasthost.com and also the creator of Alitu, the podcast maker solution. And the reason I wanted to kind of mention Colin, perhaps long overdue, is because by now he must have one of the biggest and richest websites when it comes to all things podcasting. This began as a hobby in the early 2010s. And as you know, has now become, a fully fledged business consultancy and coaching. And what he has covered over the years in around podcasting is quite simply staggering. I believe that now he has over 500 articles. These have been written. He has, of course, his own podcast series, Podcraft. But in terms of the articles, and if you have any questions, whether it's to do with, I've made the list for you, Roger, editing and production, of course, how to record well, monetization, publishing, planning your show, all the equipment from the microphones to the kit and so on, how to use your voice better, promoting, of course, and website and hosting. It's covered. And he still gets excited because I asked him. He's still curious about it and still kind of reviews and shares his knowledge. And I just think that it's wonderful to have someone like him in the UK, although he's currently living in Australia for a short while because he's working on a specific project and so on. But I just feel like, the UK is doing so well that we should give, people like Colin a shout out, because with respect, we don't have to necessarily always get the advice or the insight from the other part of the world.
Do you know, I absolutely agree with you, Pascal. And I've known Colin for many years. He's given me a lot of encouragement for the Marketing and Finance podcast. I've met him for lunch many times. Great restaurant in Edinburgh called the Chop House, which we've met for lunch a few times. I didn't realise he was going to Australia until I saw it on his Instagram story. So best of luck with that year abroad, Colin. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that I sometimes feel inundated with American content creators, and I'm not denigrating them at all. They all do incredible work, but sometimes I think that, come on, let's give the UK a little bit more promotion, because we've got equally amazing people here doing equally amazing work. So definitely a well-deserved shout out for Colin today.
And I suppose as a link to that, for our viewers and listeners who are international, and thank you again for your support. It's kind of this idea of, look at your local community, look at, what's on your patch, and can find a way to, again, increase that visibility. Because I think in a way for all of us, it's just the way in which the search engines and the social media and advertising budgets, operate, where it feels that there's a bias towards, non-local content, so to speak. And maybe it is about creating the right balance.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Super. Well, again, fine choice for these content creator shout-outs. It is time now, Roger Edwards, to move on to film marketing.
Excellent.
Right, Roger. For film marketing, I think we might be talking about the best Christmas movie ever.
The best Christmas movie ever. And that is Die Hard. And I know there'll be a lot of people out there saying, no, it's not a Christmas movie. But I am in the Christmas movie camp. And what I'd like to resurrect this debate. A lot of people say Die Hard is not a Christmas movie. I think it is a Christmas movie. Please, if you're listening to the show or watching the show, tell us in the comments on YouTube or on Twitter or wherever you consume your podcast. Tell us, is Die Hard a Christmas movie or isn't it?
Excellent. So a movie that was released in 1988, Roger. Interestingly, I personally saw it a year later on VHS cassette. I didn't go to the movies. Did you see it at the movies by any chance?
I did.
Right.
I did.
Wow.
And do you know, Pascal, it's one of the only movies, I think probably other than Star Wars, where I've gone and seen it again within a few days. I was utterly blown away by it. I think I went to see it with a girlfriend, and she suggested it. In fact, the memory's coming back now. She suggested we go to see this film, and I'd never heard of it. I didn't Die Hard, never heard of that. And Bruce Willis is some comedy actor in some silly TV series that I've never watched. So I went along not expecting to be impressed at all, and was absolutely blown away by the action sequences. I thought it had comedy moments, and it had emotional moments, and the tension and the direction and the action sequences were just incredible. And yeah, I went back to see it again on my own a couple of days later.
I'm not surprised, because actually there's so much to take in. It is actually, at the time, was breaking a few rules, such as duration. I mean, this is on for more than 2 hours, which I'm sure back then the theatre owners would have been annoyed, because, of course, that's loss of earnings, because movies should have been in around the 90 or 100 minute marks, and this is much longer. Now, for the handful of listeners who have not seen Die Hard, which I don't think is possible, let me remind you that this is about John McClane, a New York City cop who's making his way to Los Angeles to try and reunite himself with his wife, Holly Gennaro, who is working at the infamous Nakatomi Tower. And his plans to spend a lovely Christmas with his family are essentially thwarted by Hans Gruber and his band of nasty men.
And wasn't Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman, just one of the best villains in a film ever?
Ever.
I mean, he had that. It wasn't a very physical performance. It was more of it's just the delivery of his dialogue and the way he looked at the people. But honestly, he was so sinister and evil. An incredible performance. And Pascal, I love that sort of the action sequences. Obviously, John McClane manages to escape into the infrastructure of the building as the terrorists take over, and he effectively wages a one-man war against the terrorists, and he's climbing up elevator shafts and going through air conditioning ducts and that sort of thing. But he's always making wisecracks, but it never felt cheesy to me. It just felt like this is him. I've come to California, we'll go to the coast, have a few friends, have a few laughs, when he's being shot at and being blown up. And I just love that combination of the sinister villain, the action hero, the comedy, and then of course he creates a relationship with a cop on the outside, and they communicate with CB radios, and they haven't met each other, but they're supporting each other throughout the film. And this cop's on the outside and he's on the inside. And then, of course, at the end of the film, when they actually get together and realise, and they see each other for the first time, and they have this emotional moment. Again, the whole film to me had I just can't count the different ways that it blew me away.
Absolutely. And what is interesting is the director, John McTiernan, that's what he does best. I think he loves characters and character arcs and so on. And interestingly, the year before he was asked to work on Die Hard, he just worked on Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And legend has it that Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for the role of John McClane, but John McTiernan was actually a little tired of that kind of style of hero movie. But I think he sensed as well that the 90s were approaching and you had to switch it a bit and have someone that was more a kind of normal guy, that just caught up in something that he's doing his very best. And actually the character gets quite a beating, including stepping on broken glass and so on, which leads to all sort of and I think you're right, the wisecracks and one-liners is more because the character John McClane is just so fed up and annoyed and stressed and scared. It doesn't really come across as cheesy as maybe the early 80s.
Yeah, absolutely. It's again, even the character, his wife's character. There was the sort of office idiot, the one who was snorting cocaine. I can't remember what his name was. He comes to a sticky end during it. Even the minor characters in the film were real people and real characters. It's just such a great script.
It is. I didn't know this, but the research is actually based on a novel. I firmly believed, Roger, that it was actually a script that people can create from scratch. And the novel is from 1979 and actually been passed around Hollywood, including Clint Eastwood very nearly actually directed a version in the early 80s, but then got busy doing something else. And they also went through a fair amount of casting kind of duties to finally settle on Bruce Willis. You mentioned a moment ago that the guy wasn't really known. I think the year before he'd done, I'm going to say Blind Date with, who was the actress with him? Name escapes me now. I'm going to say Kim Basinger, but I'm wrong, I'm sure. But he was known even in France for Moonlightning, the series. So that led to actually some interesting kind of tension, because even the production company and distributors thought, we've got a guy that essentially is a TV actor. And in funny how time has moved on, because now working on TV is the best thing people can do. So when they looked at marketing the film, they only released actually posters with just the Nakatomi Tower blowing up and then some stripe lines, and they took away the lead actor, which nowadays, looking back at Bruce Willis' career, seems incredible. And then
that may be one of the reasons why I didn't know about the film, or maybe I'd seen the poster before it was suggested we go to see it, and maybe I just thought, it's just a remake of The Towering Inferno or something like that.
Oh, and your action is absolutely right. So for me, they didn't have faith in him, bless him, which is not very nice, when you're the lead actor. Then, of course, when the movie started to work well, they very, very quickly went rushing around reprinting posters to then have his face, and then you have that very iconic look where he's looking through, I think, a threshold of a door, and it's cut with a tower, and then you've got obviously the text and so on. But what is interesting is, the marketing was very, very low key, which again for us talking about it in 2020 seems incredible. But they released it in a few cinemas just to avoid embarrassment, and then it worked. And then quickly they kind of were chasing their tails, but in a way that was a bit late. And thank God for word of mouth.
Yeah, and of course there was some pretty good taglines, wasn't there?
There were. Which leads me on to a little request for you,
okay.
Roger Edwards. Now, this movie was on the big screen, then VHS cassette, then you had multiple DVD releases, and each time they play with the taglines. And I think it should be, as we're approaching Christmas, I've got a Christmas wish for you. I'd love for you to take on that kind of voice of a man type style and read some of the most popular taglines that we use on the cover of the DVD versions. And we may even ask Tim, our editor, to add some dramatic music. Are you up for it?
Let's do it, Pascal. Okay, so deep voice. Here we go. So, he is alone, tired, and the only chance anyone has got. 12 terrorists, 1 cop. The odds are against John McClane. And that's the way he likes it. I love this one. 40 stories high, suspense, excitement and adventure on every level. And finally, an adventure that will blow you through the back wall of the theatre. and you know what? It did. I said it before. When I was at the theatre the first time, it did blow me through the back wall of the theatre. So much that I went back again and watched it a couple of days later.
So I was going to ask you, do you have copies of Die Hard in one of the many, many DVD releases and editions they've gone for?
Absolutely. We've definitely got a DVD release, and the DVD release has even got a branched version where you can actually watch it and it'll add the deleted scenes back in.
Oh, so that must be that must be the 2003 there for the 15th anniversary. Yeah, I think I've got that one.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I've got a digital version as well in HD that I can watch either on iTunes or on Amazon or something like that.
The movie is known globally. There were some very interesting translation issues with the title because different territories, including France, Italy, Spain, and Russia, Die Hard doesn't really translate. I mean, there's something about the English language where you can be very direct and very to the point, which doesn't work so much with Latin languages. So in France, it was called the Trap of Crystal or Crystal Trap. It was called the Crystal Maze in some others, alluding to the broken glass and obviously how they're shooting through windows and that kind of things. But then obviously when they move on to Die Hard 2, 3, 4, 5, and it was no longer in the building, they got a bit caught up, but they carried on with the same title. What the hell? But one thing that stayed, no matter the language, is of course the infamous Yippee-ki-yay.
Yippee-ki-yay, mother. Which we can't say on this podcast for obvious reasons.
Only because
a bit of an Oedipus complex going on here. But of course, when they did the TV version, they changed the rude word to kimosabi. So it was Yippee-ki-yay, kimosabi. And I can remember when it first came on TV and they said Yippee-ki-yay, kimosabi. And we all went, no, that's not what they said. It actually said Yippee-ki-yay, mother. And I always get a bit annoyed when they do edits like that because to me, it just makes people then shout out what they've edited out. But hey.
So the initial releases internationally, they try and translate Yippee-ki-yay. But now, if you get a more recent print or more recent DVD, whilst the dialogue may be dubbed, the Yippee-ki-yay now is back originally. According to that special edition that you mentioned a moment ago, according to the interviews that John McTiernan and Bruce Willis gave, they had a bit of a back and forth whether it should be Yippee-ki-yay or Yippee-ki-yay, and I think Bruce Willis got his way and went for Yippee-ki-yay because I think he suggested that that's the way it's said in where it comes from, and I think that's the better version. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yippee-ki-yay. And of course, Yippee-ki-yay became the sort of one of the catchphrases from the series because he effectively says it in each film after that, usually at the moment when he's about to dispatch the main villain of the piece. It's always, you know, in the second one he blows the plane up and it's yippee-ki-yay, and the third one, again, when he brings the helicopter down, it's almost like, you're toast, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it is a wonderful film, you know, and one thing I'm going to say to you is, in terms of film marketing, please, you know, let's take away that you've got to believe in yourself and in your lead actor. It feels criminal that, you know, Bruce Willis was taken off, you know, the posters and everything else for fear that, you know, audience would not engage. But the other thing is, you know, pay attention to your audience, because when they kind of, you know, grab something and it becomes, you know, something that they could literally use for themselves, then you can go back to your content and improve upon it.
Yeah, absolutely right. And again, you know what I said before about having a face for radio. You know, they didn't believe he had a face that would sell this film, but it became such a successful franchise, you know, and there's even talk now, you know, all these years later, of a sixth film. You know, whether we'll see it, I don't know. Whether it'll be good, I don't know. But going back to that original launch in 1988, what an incredible film. We're just one of the best films of all time. I can't think how many times I've watched it. We pretty much watch it on Christmas Eve every year, because it is a Christmas movie. As I said at the start, you know, oh, the weather outside is frightful, dum-de-dum-de-dum, delightful, and all of that sort of thing.
I mean, it's kind of, you know, a conversion between High Noon and Scrooge, or, you know, Christmas Carol in a way. It's just, and it works well. And you've got to celebrate the work of the director, producers, and so on. It's also very well filmed. I will say that even though I like pretty much all of them, with maybe one exception, it is the one that where the cinematography, you know, the way in which it's filmed, the use of light and so on, is at its best.
Yeah, that bit at the end, towards the end, when he basically jumps off the top of the tower, he ties a fire hose around his waist, and he jumps off the top of the tower just as the explosion goes off. And so you've got this massive explosion in the background. He's doing this jump. I think there might be a helicopter in there as well at some point. And he basically falls down the side of the building and then has to bash his way in through one of the windows. I mean, it was just breathtaking. Absolutely. And it's still, you know, I as I say, I've lost count. I must have seen it 20, 30, maybe 40 times. But every time I watch it, that particular sequence, it's just, oh, my goodness, here we go.
Well, I'm so pleased that we went for this one, clearly, because you're a big fan. So we began, obviously, this film marketing segment review of Die Hard by suggesting that this is the best Christmas movie ever. We want your opinion and views on that. But just to leave you with something to take away, when obviously 20th Century Fox, who actually provided the building, you know, Nakatomi Tower is obviously Fox's headquarters as well. So let's keep it in you know, within the family. But when they released obviously the 15th anniversary DVD that you have, Roger, they did say during the press release, yes, we agree, it is the greatest Christmas story ever told. So
So there you are. It is a Christmas movie.
So this brings me to the end of our recording for episode 17 of Two Geeks and Marketing Podcast. Once again, thank you for your wonderful support. Please leave comments, suggestions, and feedback in the usual places. Until the next one, please make sure that your marketing is done right. I was Pascal Fintoni, and he was Roger Edwards. Bye for now.